Her voice came from behind me, low, unhurried. Is it supposed to sound like that? I didn't have to turn around to know it was her. There was a calmness in the way she spoke, like someone who'd stopped rushing years ago and never looked back. The wrench slipped in my hand, clanging against the frame. I muttered something about the chain. She stepped closer, the scent of her perfume, something faint, like jasmine after rain, threading into the air between us. I'd seen her around before. Miss Carver. She lived 2 streets over, always in that quiet gray house with the crooked gate. She carried herself the way some people handle glass, carefully, but as if they'd long accepted the cracks. "Do you fix bikes often?" she asked. "Only the ones that don't bite back," I said, trying to sound casual. She smiled, a small curve that made her eyes softer. "This one looks like it might." Her bike leaned against the fence, the back tire flat and the chain half-slipped. I'd offered to help when I saw her walking it down the street. I didn't expect her to stay, most people dropped their things and left. But she didn't. She crouched down beside me, knees brushing the dirt, watching quietly as I worked. It was the kind of silence that presses close, not empty but waiting. I could feel her watching, not impatiently, just there. The air felt heavier, the late sunlight slipping through the leaves above us, hitting the chrome in thin gold lines. She asked, "How old are you?" 26. She nodded slowly, like that answered more than the question. When I reached for the chain, my arm brushed her knee. Warm. Steady. She didn't pull back, just shifted slightly, enough for the fabric of her skirt to whisper against my sleeve. "You're good with your hands," she said. That threw me for a second, not the words, but how she said them. Lightly, but with a pause at the end that felt heavier than it should. "Sometimes," I said. "Depends what I'm fixing." Her laugh came quietly, under her breath. Then she leaned forward, pointing at something near the sprocket, her shoulder nearly against mine. "That part looks," she began, but didn't finish. The bike wobbled slightly under my grip. I steadied it. That's when she did it. She sat on the seat, right as I was still holding the frame between my knees. The movement was nothing dramatic, slow, almost absent-minded, but it froze everything. The scent of her hair. The warmth of her back close to my chest. My hands, still on the handlebars, couldn't move. She didn't look at me. Just faced forward, chin slightly up, her reflection faint in the window ahead. "Is that too close?" she asked, quiet. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The chain clicked softly as it settled into place, the only sound between us. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched, almost imperceptibly, before reaching into her pocket. The screen lit her face, someone's name flashing briefly before she turned it off. "I should go," she said, her voice thinner now. But she didn't move yet. Her fingers lingered on the handlebar, just above mine. I said, without thinking, "You didn't even ride it." She smiled, faint, unreadable, then finally stood, brushing a speck of dust from her skirt. "Maybe next time." And before I could say anything else, she was walking away, the air behind her still holding the warmth of where she'd been. The bike stood fixed, steady, but my hands wouldn't let go. Then, footsteps. Hers again. Stopping just behind me. "Wait," she said. And everything stopped there. She came back the next evening. No message, no warning, just the crunch of her shoes on the gravel as I was locking up the toolshed. "I think the brake's rubbing now," she said, holding the same bike. It wasn't. I could tell from where I stood. But I didn't say that. Inside the shed, the air smelled of oil and pine, sharp, grounded. She leaned the bike against the workbench and folded her arms, pretending to study the walls. I wiped my hands on a rag and waited for the real reason she was there. "You always this busy?" she asked. "Not really. Depends who shows up with broken things." She smiled a little. And if they don't? Then I wait. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, maybe. The kind that comes from years of waiting for something yourself. She'd mentioned once, in passing, that her husband traveled often. Never said what he did, or when he'd be back. I didn't ask. But there was a quiet around her, the kind that doesn't come from peace, it comes from being alone too long. I adjusted the brake just to give my hand something to do. She moved closer, her hip brushing the edge of the bench beside me. You look focused, she said. I try. Her hand came to rest lightly on my shoulder as she leaned in, watching. Just a hand, small, warm, steady, but it stayed a moment too long. Long enough for my breath to go uneven. When she realized, she started to pull back. I caught her fingers without thinking, just a reflex to keep that warmth there another second. Her eyes lifted, not shocked, not offended, just searching. Don't, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. I let go. The silence after that was unbearable, all hum and heartbeat. I broke it. You know people would talk, right? Her laugh was soft, but hollow. They always do. She turned toward the doorway, the sunset washing her in amber light. You're, what, 20-something? I could be your, don't say it, I cut in. She stopped, halfway to smiling, halfway to regret. It's not about that, I added. It's just, but I couldn't finish. Because she was standing too close again, close enough for me to smell her shampoo, faintly citrus, like she'd just showered. Her hair brushed my cheek as she reached past me to steady the bike. Her breath grazed my neck. Then what's it about, she asked. I didn't answer. The chain of the bike ticked softly between us, steady, rhythmic, almost cruel in how normal it sounded. Her hand slid from the handlebar, grazed mine, then fell away. I should go, she said again. You said that yesterday. She hesitated in the doorway, her back to me. And yet, she said quietly, here I am. For a moment, she didn't leave. The light faded, the air between us charged and still. Then she turned, not to kiss me, not even to touch, but just to look, a single look that felt like she'd crossed some invisible line neither of us could name. And in that look, something unspoken locked into place, fragile, wrong, impossible to stop. The third time she came, it was raining. Hard, sudden, the kind that soaks through before you can even decide to run. She stood under the awning, hair damp, coat clinging to her arms. Chains loose again, she said, but the lie was obvious. The chain was perfect. I let her in anyway. The shed was small, too small now. The rain hit the roof in steady bursts, sealing us inside. She shook the water from her hands and laughed quietly, embarrassed. Guess I didn't think this through. I handed her a towel. She took it, fingers brushing mine, a simple thing, but everything seemed to narrow to that point of contact. Your hands are cold, I said. So warm them. She said it without looking up, voice low, like she wasn't sure she wanted me to hear it. I froze. She didn't move closer, not yet, but her reflection in the window caught the faintest smile, nervous, almost daring. I reached for the bike just to have something to hold. You know someone's going to see you walking here all the time. Let them, she said. People assume what they want. The thunder rolled, deep and close. We both looked toward the open door. And then, a voice. Carver. You here? We both jumped. It came from outside, faint through the rain, a neighbor, probably, calling from the street. She pressed a finger to her lips, her breath shallow. I killed the light. The shed went dim, just gray outlines and the glow from the wet yard. Her hand caught my sleeve in the dark. Neither of us spoke. The voice faded after a minute, replaced by the steady sound of rain. She didn't let go. When the quiet settled again, she exhaled, a slow, shaky breath that landed right against my throat. "That was close," she whispered. "Yeah." Her hand was still on my arm. She realized it, but didn't move away. I turned my head slightly, too close now, the kind of close where words don't fit. Her perfume was softer in the damp air, almost gone, replaced by rain and skin. Her eyes met mine, searching, uncertain. I could see the line of her jaw tense, the pulse at her neck flicker. She started to speak, "We shouldn't," but the words fell apart halfway through. I leaned in before I could stop myself. And she didn't pull back. Not until the sound of her phone broke through, that same sharp buzz. She flinched again, turned it face down on the bench without looking. The silence that followed was worse. Her hand found the edge of the work table, gripping it. "This is stupid," she said, barely audible. "Then why are you here?" Her eyes lifted, wide, torn between anger and something else. "Because I can't stop thinking about it." We stood there, not touching, but close enough that every breath tangled. Then the rain eased, leaving just the two of us and the echo of what almost happened. Neither of us moved. And even without a kiss, it felt like we'd already crossed it. The storm passed, but she didn't. We sat in the half-dark, the smell of rain and motor oil thick in the air. She was perched on the edge of the workbench, coat still damp, hair clinging to her neck. Every few seconds, she pushed a strand behind her ear, and each time, I wanted to do it for her. "I can't keep doing this," she said finally. Her voice was low, steady, but her hands wouldn't stay still. "Doing what?" "This," she said, motioning vaguely between us. "Showing up here. Pretending it's about the bike." She looked at me then, really looked, tired, raw, caught somewhere between want and guilt. "I tell myself I come because I need to," she said. "But the truth is she stopped. Swallowed. I just need something that feels real for 5 minutes." That hit hard. She didn't have to say more. I stood closer, close enough that the air changed. The warmth of her body cut through the cool dampness of the shed. My voice came out softer than I meant. "You think this isn't real?" Her laugh was quiet, bitter. "That's the problem. It is." I moved before I thought, reaching out, just to touch her shoulder, to steady her. But she turned into the touch, leaning slightly against my hand, like she'd been waiting for it. My thumb brushed against the side of her neck, and she drew in a breath, sharp and small. "Someone will see," she whispered, but her voice shook. "No one's looking," I said. "That's not the same as no one knowing." The space between us shrank again, not a decision, just gravity. Her hand lifted, fingers tracing the edge of my collar, then stopping. "I shouldn't," she said. "You already are." Her eyes closed. For a moment, I thought she'd step back, that she'd pull herself together like she always did. But instead, she reached up and brushed my hair from my forehead, slow, deliberate. Her fingers trembled, just a little. "I hate how young you are," she whispered. I smiled, not sure why. "You don't sound like you mean that." "I do," she said, but she didn't move away. I could feel her heartbeat when she finally leaned in, her forehead resting against mine. Her breath touched my lips. Every sense narrowed, the damp wood, the warmth of her skin, the faint tremor in her chest. "If I kiss you," she said, "I don't know if I'll stop." "Then don't," I said, and that was it, the breath before something irreversible. But before it happened, a sound cut through, footsteps outside, fast, close. She jerked back, eyes wide, chest rising hard. "Someone's here," I whispered. The door creaked, a shadow moved in the sliver of light. She pressed her hand against my chest, keeping me still. "Don't," she mouthed. Her hand stayed there, heartbeat against heartbeat, both of us frozen in the space between wanting and being caught. And then, just as the door began to open, she whispered, almost trembling, "Tell me you'll forget me." The door creaked open, just an inch, then stopped. Her breath hitched against my chest. For a second, I thought whoever it was would step inside. But instead, the footsteps shifted away, fading into the gravel outside. The silence that followed was too sharp, too aware. She didn't move at first. Her hand stayed on me, palm flat, heartbeat wild. Then she pushed gently, putting space between us. I thought it was over. But she didn't leave. Instead, she said quietly, "That was my husband." The words landed like a drop of oil in water, spreading, impossible to ignore. "He wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday," she went on, voice shaking. "He's staying in town tonight. Business changed." I stared at her, not knowing what to say. The shed felt smaller, heavier. "So all this time," I started. "It wasn't what you think," she cut in, fast. Then softer, "At least, not at first." Her eyes found the ground. "He stopped asking where I go. Stopped noticing when I came back. And I told myself that was freedom." She laughed once, quiet, humorless. "But I think I just wanted to see if I could still make someone look at me the way he used to." The truth stung, even though I'd known it somewhere deep down. "So I'm, what, practice?" Her head snapped up. "Don't say that." "Then what am I?" Her silence answered before she could. I turned away, wiping at the grease on my hands that wasn't really there. She stepped closer again, slower this time, tentative. "That first day," she said, "when I sat on the bike. I didn't mean to. But you looked up at me like," she stopped, voice trembling. "Like I wasn't invisible anymore." The rain had stopped, but the world outside still felt soaked and waiting. She reached for me again, fingertips grazing the back of my neck. I didn't pull away, but I didn't turn either. "You shouldn't have come back," I said quietly. "I know." Her hand slid down, over my shoulder, lingering at my arm, a touch that was apology and confession both. "Then why did you?" "Because," she said, exhaling, "I can't undo what I've already started wanting." That did it. The air between us thinned to nothing. I turned, fast, maybe too fast, and suddenly we were face to face again. Close enough to feel the tremor in her breath. She looked at me like she wanted to step forward but couldn't trust herself to survive it. "Does he know?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet." The words "not yet" carried too much. A flash of headlights passed outside, sweeping through the slats of the shed. For a heartbeat, her wedding ring caught the light, a glint that felt almost cruel. She saw me looking and slipped it off. Slowly. Carefully. Then she set it on the workbench between us. "I won't lie anymore," she said, her voice breaking just enough to make it real. And in that instant, her ring shining in the half-light, her eyes steady, I knew we were already past the point of turning back. The sound of the ring settling on the bench was soft, but it echoed like a door slamming shut. Neither of us moved. The rain outside had slowed to a steady drip, the kind that draws every breath out longer than it should. She looked at me, not the way she had before, not with hesitation or playfulness. This was something stripped down. Bare. "I didn't come here to destroy anything," she said. "I just stopped being able to lie to myself." I nodded, though my chest felt tight. "You don't have to explain." "I do," she said. "Because after this, I can't pretend it was an accident." Her voice shook on this, and that tiny tremor made something inside me unravel. She stepped closer, slowly, as if testing the strength of the floor beneath her feet. I could feel the warmth of her before she even touched me. Her hand rose, hesitated midair, then found my chest. Her palm fit there like it belonged, and I caught her wrist lightly, not to stop her, just to steady the world spinning between us. "Say it," I whispered. She blinked. "Say what?" "That you want this." Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she leaned in, until her breath grazed my cheek, until her forehead rested against mine. Her voice came out like air itself, "I already did." Everything slowed after that, the sound of the rain, the faint hum of the world outside. I could feel every detail, the soft hitch of her breath, the faint tremor in her fingers, the way her heartbeat tripped against my own. "You'll hate yourself," I said, not as a warning, but as a truth that already hurt. "I already do," she said, and it broke something open in both of us. I reached up, brushing the wet strands of hair from her face. She closed her eyes, leaning into the touch like someone starving for warmth. My hand slipped to her jaw, tracing the line of it, and for a long, fragile moment, we just stayed there, suspended in the decision neither of us could unmake. Then, without a word, she lifted her head, eyes meeting mine, searching, asking, daring. I could taste the nearness of her. But then I saw it, the ring on the workbench, a circle catching the dim light. The reminder that this moment wasn't just about us. She saw where I was looking. Her voice softened, almost breaking. "If I walk out now, you'll think I didn't want it. If I stay, I lose everything I am." The air between us pulsed with what neither of us said. Finally, I stepped back, just an inch. Enough for the space to return. "You should go," I whispered. She stared at me, silent, shaking, eyes shining in the half-light. Then she reached for the ring, holding it tightly in her palm instead of putting it back on. "I wish I'd met you before all the years happened," she said. And with that, she turned toward the door. When she left, the rain started again, soft, steady, relentless. And though nothing had happened, everything had. For the first time, I understood, wanting her wasn't the tragedy. Letting her go was the only way it could ever be real. It had been weeks since that night in the shed. The bike was gone, the tools put away, but I still caught myself glancing at the empty space where she'd stood, hands folded, eyes uncertain, hair damp from the rain. I told myself it was over. That she'd gone back to her world, the quiet gray house, the careful smiles, the life built long before I ever fit into it. Then one evening, near sunset, I saw her again. Not by accident this time. She was standing by the fence, the bike beside her, perfect, untouched. The same one I'd fixed. "I thought you'd stopped riding," I said. She smiled faintly. "I thought I had." Her tone was softer now. Something about her had changed, less guarded, less heavy. But there was still that same stillness in her eyes, the kind that knew how to hide and ache at once. "Can I?" she asked, nodding toward the shed. I stepped aside. We didn't talk while she walked in. The air smelled of old rain and dust, like memory itself had settled there. She ran her fingers over the bench, stopping where the ring had once Saturday. "I left it off for good," she said, quiet. I didn't ask how that ended. Some things didn't need to be said. I kept thinking, she continued, that what we wanted wasn't real. That it was just timing, or loneliness, or something we'd regret later. And now? She looked up at me. "Now I think real isn't always right. But it's still real." That was all it took. I stepped closer, slowly, the same gravity that had always pulled us together, but gentler this time. Her hands found mine first, fingers threading through like she'd done it 1,000 times in her head before daring it out loud. We didn't rush. We just stood there, breathing the same air, eyes level, everything quiet. My thumb brushed over her wrist, that small, simple movement that somehow said everything we'd both been afraid to name. When I leaned in, it wasn't a desperate moment anymore. Just steady. Honest. The kind of closeness that didn't need permission. Her forehead rested against mine. No trembling, no running, just a shared stillness. "I don't want perfect," she whispered. "Just honest." "You already have that," I said. Outside, the sky dimmed to orange. The rain had finally stopped for good. We stayed like that, her fingers laced in mine, her breath soft against my neck, not needing to fix anything anymore. Just being there, two people who had almost ruined everything trying to feel alive. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a secret. It just felt right enough. When she finally pulled back, she smiled, tired, beautiful, unguarded. "Ride with me?" she asked. I nodded. "Always." The bike wheels turned slowly down the wet road, the world stretching open around us, no promises, no guilt, just the quiet rhythm of two people finally moving in the same direction. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? ***.